demanding its unrestricted view of the Second Amendment, which is inconsistent with American history and jurisprudence, out of touch with public safety, and out of step with the American people. That's why the NRA has tirelessly worked to stop any and every congressional action on gun safety for years, including fixing our broken background check system or keeping guns away from domestic abusers and stalkers, policies supported by 90% of the American public. And now, they want the court to halt the hard-fought, life-saving progress that the gun safety movement, has made in dozens of states across the country in recent years. The American people are demanding action to address the public health epidemic of gun violence, and they're demanding action now. And they're handed the NRA defeat after defeat. The NRA is on the ropes, and now it needs the Supreme Court to bail it out. I urge the justices to listen to the American people, do the right thing, and affirm that gun rights and reasonable gun safety regulations can coexist. God bless each and every one of you.
Enough is enough!
Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough!
All right, I love this. Gun law! Gun law! Gun law! Gun law! Gun law! Looks like we got the bigger megaphone, doesn't it? All right, so while we're waiting for the mic to come back live, I'm gonna have my man Javier use the megaphone. He's a master at it, though. Let's give it up for Javier Lopez from the Red Hook Initiative.
Peace, 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 everybody. What's going on? I bring you peace and blessings and greetings from the Red Hook Initiative in Red Hook, Brooklyn, Community Capacity Development, and 696 Queensbridge. All three of those organizations I work for and I serve to end gun violence in urban communities across New York City. The Supreme Court does not need to hear or review the New York State rifle case. Many in the legal community have already regarded this case as being moot. My state has already taken the necessary steps to repeal the rule at the heart of the case. So it's some bullshit right now that we're even talking about it. Any hearing, interpretation, and ruling on New York State rifle at this point would be political as fuck. As a representative for the thousands of African American, Latinx, and indigenous gun violence prevention credible messengers, leaders, and advocates who are working day and night to eradicate gun violence, we cannot allow the NRA to play politics with our courts without loudly stating how our neighborhoods, my community, will be negatively impacted by everything that's going on right behind me. In African American and Latinx neighborhoods that we serve, young people of color, their families, and the neighborhoods experience the impact of gun violence most acutely. To put it in perspective, the firearm-related homicide rate amongst African American male youths between the ages of 10 and 25 years old is nearly 20 times higher than the rate of white young males. Now sit on that. You see this man talking? He don't know nothing about our communities. He don't know a goddamn thing that happens in our communities. And he out here talking. He out here talking. What's he saying? He ain't saying a goddamn thing. Many have called violence a public health crisis, which is an accurate description of this epidemic. But perhaps a lesser known public health outcome as a result of the exposure of gun violence and its significance is the following risk factors that include asthma, hypertension, cancer, and stroke. When gun violence plays out, ain't nobody talking about all the outcomes. Nobody's talking about how the hospitals are filled with families who have been impacted severely, behavioral health and physical health. The trauma is severe. The NRA continues to promote weak gun laws which allow guns and illegal guns to proliferate in my neighborhoods and 9 communities that I serve, leading to more and more shootings, homicides that perpetuate traumas that have impacted generations. We have generations of people living in public housing that have been impacted by gun violence. Ain't nobody talking about them. They're not even here. Who's here? I'm here as one representative. In addition, and rarely said in the gun violence debate, in the illegal gun law debate, and the gun safety debate, is the fact that these gun laws allow for the dominant response to gun violence in our communities to be over-aggressive policing, to be prosecution, to be sentencing, to growing out the prison industrial complex, which too often results in additional harm to these neighborhoods already plagued by gun violence. When they manipulate the gun safety laws, the police come in our communities and bash our heads in. Ain't nobody talking about that. Y'all not even talking about that. The NRA has done enough to harm our neighborhoods. I urge the Supreme Court to turn their attention to other pressing issues, such as the continued segregation of public schools, the expanded police surveillance in black and brown neighborhoods, health care access, and much more. The NRA has done enough harm to our neighborhoods. And finally, allow me to give my condolences to the family of Clarence Venable. He was a man that was shot to death as he left the training session at the Alliance for Concerned Men, a not-for-profit based group in Washington that helps prevent gun violence. He is one of our nation's unknown heroes who deserves to be recognized as part of our nation's Credible Messages community, which is predominantly African American and Latinx led. Thank you very much.
Hey, give it up one more time for Javier. All right, hey, if you have a Toyota Corolla with license plate
3AF6027, if the bumper sticker says I love parks, you might get towed. Toyota Corolla 3AF6027. It may get towed. Go ahead and move that thing. Okay. All right, guys, y'all feel a little rain? I don't feel no rain. I don't care if it was snowing, we would be out here, wouldn't we? So all I gotta say to these guys here into the rain, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. All right, next we're gonna have Elijah Nichols come up, a senior fellow in the Giffords Courage Fellow Program, and start the Student Demands Action chapter at George Mason University. Give it up for Elijah, everybody.
Hi. 627,200. That is the number of individuals that were shot in 2006. 30,896. That is the number of individuals that died due to gun violence in 2006. Out of the many bodies, many names, and many stories of that year, I only know one. I only know the story of the one that was a father with 2 young children, a husband to a loving wife, and the one that was an uncle, my uncle, Frank Simpson. You see, I remember my mom getting a call, her hands shaking, and her picking up the remote to turn on the TV. As the screen turned on and my mother turned to the local news channel, I remember our family photo flashing up onto the screen. The black turtlenecks that everyone wore, similar to the one that I am wearing today, to me has become a symbol of a communal sense of mourning. At 5 years old, my family and I became a part of a community of families that have had someone that they love killed by a gun. Let me make this clear. Frank Simpson, as well as the thousands that have been killed before and sadly after him, are the reason that I fight. And I hope you will fight for them too. Now I can tell you that being here today in front of the Supreme Court, you are fighting for Frank. You are fighting for him and the many like him by speaking truth to power against the NRA and their cronies. Inside those marble walls, what the supposed gun rights organization is pushing for is nothing more than a political game with their lives. It is an agenda of a murder. There is absolutely no reason for this case to be at the Supreme Court today. I just need that to be known. Let me say that again. There's absolutely no...
There's no reason for this case to be at the Supreme Court today. I just
The regulations that is being discussed inside that courtroom today have already been repealed. It's politics, plain and simple. What the organization is doing inside there is putting politics and the profits of gun manufacturers over our lives. That's right. For Frank, I say not today. I say that the NRA will not win today because we will not stop fighting. We will elect pro-gun violence prevention candidates. We will take back the local, state, and federal legislators. We will make sure that those we vote in put judges on the bench that are for the people, not for the profits of a few. We will win this for Frank, for you, and for the safety of our future generations. My name is Elijah Nichols. I am proudly from Muskegon, Michigan. Now let's win this thing.
All right, give it up for Elijah, everybody. All right, real quick, I know a lot of us have lost someone or know someone who's been impacted by gun violence, just like Elijah spoke of Frank. So I want you to take a second, think about that name, and on the count of 3, I want you to yell that name as loud as you can to bring them into the space. You got it? All right, 1, 2, 3. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys. All right, before we bring up the next speaker, all my papers are wet. Look at this, it's gonna be a mess. I need to get paid for this. Okay, all right. Before we bring up the next speaker, I wanna make sure y'all still awake. So, enough? Enough! 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 All right, our next speaker is Ian Palmquist. Ian, are you here? Give it up, be real loud for Ian, everybody.
Morning, everybody. My name is Ian Palmquist, and I'm the Senior Director of Programs at Equality Federation. We're the national partner to statewide organizations who are winning equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people in the communities we call home. And we are proud today to stand with Every Action and all of the organizations here today to call on the Supreme Court to reject the NRA's attempt to deprive us of the right to enact measures to protect ourselves from gun violence. The LGBTQ community knows gun violence too well. We know gun violence in the massacre at Pulse in Orlando, where 49 lives were lost, bringing violence and death to a place where people went to feel safe. We know gun violence in the epidemic of murders of trans women of color. We know gun violence in the rising number of hate crimes against LGBTQ people. We know gun violence in the loss of folks in our community to suicide at rates far beyond the national average. And we know gun violence in our schools, where sexual and gender minority students are more likely to be threatened with a firearm. And we know we need sensible regulations to protect our communities from violence. Today, we need the Supreme Court to stand up to the NRA. The NRA wants to use this case to challenge and roll back hundreds of gun safety laws across our country. Every gun law is at risk, even measures that are overwhelmingly supported by the American people. For the LGBTQ community, for all our communities, the justices must not endanger public safety. They must not adopt a radical new interpretation of the Second Amendment. It is wrong, it is inconsistent with our Constitution, it is dangerous, and it would mean even more guns in our public spaces and the spaces we all deserve to feel safe. Thank you so much.
Gun laws! Gun laws! Gun laws! Gun laws! Gun laws! All right, next we're going to bring up Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Give it up for Randy.
So, it's very sad when the NRA, who has pushed this case today, needs to have someone with a megaphone. Wait, in this community. Wait. It is very sad that the NRA needs to actually try and disrupt this community of people who love other people. right to speak, just like they have. No, don't worry about it. Remember, I'm a school teacher. I'm used to disruptive children. They have a right to speak, but so do we. And at a moment of time like this, when you have, and I have seen, my local is the local in Newtown. My local is the local in Parkland. We've had speakers here before who have talked about their families being killed by gun violence. We have a law in New York that has been there, and as a result, there has been no gun violence in schools in New York. And the NRA wants to get rid of that law. This is a moment. This is, again, I'm used to disruptive students. This is a moment where we as a community come together to say it's time to act. When a nation loses more students to gun violence in a year than service members in combat, it's time to act. When young people say, you notice that he needs to disrupt these facts. When young people say their greatest fear is gun violence, is it time to act? When students and teachers across the country speak about school shootings in terms of when, not if, is it time to act? When our children are demanding action, is it time to act? Well, you, my friends, you are acting by sitting here, by standing here in the rain. You are acting. You are being out here making sure that the Supreme Court, that others actually understand that we need sensible gun violence laws like the law in New York City and New York State. We need to act across the country. So, are you ready to act? Are you ready to act in the November elections? Are you ready to stand here and be heard? Thank you.
All right, everybody, give it up for Randy one more time. What do we want? When do we want them? What do we want? When do we want them? I can hear you all the way in the back. Great job. I see you right there. Nice job. All right, next we're going to hear from Bob Mokos, who lost his sister to gun violence, a former Air Force pilot from Minnesota and co-lead of the Minnesota Gun Owners for Safety. Please give it up for Bob, everybody.
I got my glasses. Can't see without my eyes. Thank you. Good morning, my fellow citizens and supporters of democracy. I stand before you as a survivor of gun violence, a gun owner, and a veteran of our armed forces. I know too well the pain of losing a loved one to gun violence when in 1986, my sister Diane was murdered as she exited her car to enter a church. 100 people a day die at the hand of a gun in this country. 100 people a day, with hundreds more injured. Those 100 a day equal just about 4 Sandy Hooks every single day in this country. And when my sister was murdered, that was our family's personal Sandy Hook. As a gun owner and a former participant in NRA-sponsored events, I emphatically can proclaim that the NRA does not speak for me nor represent my views. In fact, the NRA no longer represents the majority of our citizens who have come together to call for common sense gun legislation. The gun manufacturing lobby is now trying to convince the Supreme Court to prop up their losing agenda. The court should say no to the gun lobby and interpret the Second Amendment as the Founding Fathers intended. A well-regulated militia does not mean an unregulated armed populace wreaking havoc upon our peace and tranquility. It is time for the NRA and the court to listen to Antonin Scalia when in Heller versus D.C., Justice Scalia said that these rights in the Second Amendment do not come without regulation. Our government is obligated, per the Constitution, to ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity.
Thank God for the Constitution.
This can only happen by protecting our gun laws so that we can all feel safe in our schools, churches, nightclubs, shopping malls, parks, and so forth. As an Air Force officer, I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The NRA used to be a gun safety and a sportsman organization. It is now a lobbying arm for the gun manufacturing industry. And it works counter to every single one of the founding principles I quoted. I, for one, am weary of our children's lives being the cost we pay for the Second Amendment. I call upon the Supreme Court to not give in to the NRA's agenda, but instead to rein in its influence and return this country on a path to peace, tranquility, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Bob, everybody. All right, next coming to the stage, we have Lourdes Russell, a junior attending Stone Ridge School at the Sacred Heart in Bethesda, the same private school where multiple Supreme Court justices send their children. She has led gun violence activism within her school, coordinated walkouts, organizing town halls, and sharing her story for March for Our Lives. Please give it up for her one more time. Come on, y'all, one more time for Lourdes.
A bit short. Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Lourdes, and I'm one of the 9 student voices in the amicus brief presented by March for Our Lives to the Justices of the Supreme Court. I have not had the same experience as some of the other people that have been up here. I have never been directly affected by gun violence, but I speak for everyone my age and younger whose innocence has been forever stained by this growing epidemic, by the increase in active shooter drills, the necessity of various escape plans, and the conversations of death that we must now have with small children. We are the first generation to be affected by such a large magnitude, the mass shooting generation. I'm a junior at Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart, a place where, like in many other elite private schools, we students used to think we were untouchable. We used to think that by some privilege, our tuition and our uniforms protected us from the atrocities happening in this country. I can remember moments where I didn't let my anxiety take over because I thought being a suburban, private school attending girl would protect me. But that's not the case anymore. For a long time, I thought I could focus on my love for language learning and math instead of being shot at school. Through the failures of politicians, my classmates and I have been shaken out of that luxury. I watched as children in Sandy Hook and Parkland were let out of their schools with their hands above their heads, their friends dead behind them. And just last year, when there was an active shooter threat at a high school just next door to my school, I realized that no privilege I had could save me. I texted my parents updates that day, assuring them that I was going to be fine, that I wasn't going to be shot, because our school administrators told me I was going to be fine. We went into lockdown, and I sat in my world history class doing whatever I could to distract myself from the prospect of dying where I sat. Although it was eventually declared a false alarm, and there never ended up being an active shooter next door, I became on edge after that afternoon. I said in our amicus brief that the question of feeling safe at school was complex. But after further reflection, I realized that that's not true. I don't feel safe anywhere. I never went through the real thing, and I don't feel safe at all. And I thought to myself, if I feel this way, and I go to an elite independent school that some of these justices send their students to, how do people that don't have my privilege, how are they supposed to feel in their communities when they're threatened? That question made me want to face the hypocrisy of the people in power in this country, to challenge our existing laws through our democracy. The people in power can say that we're the future, but we can't be the future if we're shot dead at school. The people in power can say they understand our experiences, but they go places with heavy security details and send their kids to the safest, most elite schools that money can buy. That hypocrisy is why I became involved in this work. I channel my anxiety and sadness and anger into our democracy. I help organize town halls and walkouts to the Capitol, and working for that through my school administration has not been simple. But as much as my school has pushed back against us, and as much as politicians have pushed back against us, and as much as unelected officials have pushed back against us, our movement has not given up. But today, the Supreme Court is hearing a case that can invalidate all of that work. The Supreme Court justices could deprive us of the chance to end our fear through the democratic process. Thoughts and prayers can't fix this. Right? They can't fix it. The government needs to let us, people like you and me, have the chance to fix this through real laws and legislation and policy. Nowhere is safe, regardless of the precautions we take or the privileges we have. The decision of this case paves the way for how our government will grapple with gun control and legislation for the decades to come. And in case you didn't know, it's not the video games, it's not the lack of preparation, and it's not your zip code. It's the guns, and we deserve and how the hell they're regulated. The Supreme Court can't take that away from us. Thank you.
Great job. All right, next to the stage. Before we do that, though, let's hear it for our haters one time. Enough? Enough? That's awesome. All right, thank you, guys. We're going to hear from Marco Vargas, a first-generation college student. We know it's important that our kids are safe in school and at home, and that's why he started Students Demand Action at his school and a Demand Action chapter in his own community of South Central Los Angeles. So please give it up for Marco.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Marco Vargas, and I am a first-generation college student attending Dartmouth College. And I'm a student with Students Demand Action. For the last 2 years, my friends and I have immersed ourselves in the fight against gun violence because we know that it disproportionately impacts communities of color. When I was 5 years old, gun violence devastated my family before I could even learn how to ride a bike. I witnessed my father striking my mother, screaming and getting drunk after school. Elementary school teachers would ask me why I didn't complete my homework, and I would silently respond because I didn't have time. But I should have explained how no one in my house spoke English, how my mom was struggling to figure out a way to escape the bruises, nosebleeds, and black eyes that inflicted her body every time my father parked his white pickup truck and closed the door behind him. For years, my mother was forced to clean, cook, and grocery shop because my father was affiliated. He walked up and down our street, concealing a pistol he purchased on the black market because with 10 bullets in the chamber, he was always in control.
He should have been in jail, sir.
A gun was what my father used to silence my entire family for years. He never fired a bullet at us, but the psychological scars that pierced my family still hurt. They hurt when my friends ask me about my father. They hurt when I hear similar stories from friends in South Central. And they hurt when I turn on the news and see guns senselessly being used to inflict pain and suffering that I know from experience will not go away anytime soon. It's been 15 years since police took my father's gun away and approved a restraining order. I fight against gun violence because stories like mine are too common. I fear that gun violence in the United States has become normalized. Today is a reminder of why we must tell our stories. Today in this building, the NRA is pushing for an extreme interpretation of the Second Amendment, and we are here because we know what's at stake. Every day in communities across the nation, black and brown students hear gunshots at night. I was raised listening to the uproar of police sirens at night, helicopters circling the block, white lights beaming down, and dogs barking uncontrollably. This does not have to be the reality of future generations. When I look at all of us gathered here today, I am reminded how many of us agree. I'm reminded how many of us have been affected by gun violence, and I'm reminded how hard we'll continue to fight to make our country safer. Thank you very much.
All right, give it up for Marco, everybody. Please welcome Robin Thomas to the stage next, everybody. Big round of applause.
Thank you so much for being here with us today on this cold December morning. Throughout history, change has been made by the people who showed up and spoke out. Your presence here today serves as a reminder to this court and to our elected officials that the many, many Americans demanding an end to gun violence aren't going anywhere. We're here today because we are here today because we are angry. We're angry because there are 100 Americans a day who die from gun violence. 100 yesterday and 100 tomorrow, and we are sick and tired of it. We're here today because survivors, many of you in this crowd, survivors like Gabby Giffords, whose life is a model of public service and courage, and who will fight with us every day in the face of the unimaginable heartache that comes with the crisis of gun violence in America. We're here today because we want our politicians to take action to end this epidemic, not waste our time listening to cases that aren't even on the books anymore. A case brought by gun lobby plaintiffs orchestrated to advance the interests of the people who make guns and buy guns and who care more about guns than the lives of our children. The right not to get shot, the right to live a life free from gun violence is far more important than the narrow law that we hear before this court today. But no matter what this court decides, no matter how this turns out, we are not going anywhere. Our focus as a country needs to be on what will make our children, our families, and our communities safer. That is what we're fighting for, and that is what we're going to keep fighting for, not for an industry that makes profits selling more guns. The Giffords Law Center and Gabby Giffords have been at the forefront of this fight for a long time, and we're not backing down. When I look out at this crowd today in this rainy, cold morning, I know that we are stronger than we've ever been. We are winning and making progress, and that's going to continue. Thank you for being here, and don't give up.
All right, give it up for Robin, y'all. Okay, I realize we haven't all met each other, so everybody put your hands in the air. Shake your hands. Okay, we've all shook hands. Now you know everybody in the room. Thank you so much. So we're going to take a quick musical intermission, and then we'll get back to the program. So give it up for our band, everyone. And while they're setting up, what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? All right, thank you guys. Give them a round of applause one more time. Oh yeah. She told me to keep going. So, enough is. Enough is. Enough is. Enough is. Enough is. Enough is. All right, we're gonna play a game real quick. If you're on the left side, I want you to say end. If you're in the middle, I want you to say gun. And if you're on my right, say violence. Y'all got it?
Check, check.
All right, here we go.
Gun violence! Gun violence! Gun violence! Gun violence! Gun violence! Gun violence! Gun violence!
That was beautiful, y'all. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, give it up for the band.
We're not safe anymore. They're walking their guns through the synagogue door. No, we aren't safe anywhere when they're cutting down the faithful in their houses of prayer. Mother Emanuel in Charleston, a Sikh temple in Oak Creek. How much blood needs to be spilled? Oh, spare me your thoughts and prayers, speech. We're not safe anymore. They're gunning us down in our grocery stores. No, we aren't safe anywhere when they're murdering our babies in their classroom chairs. Too many schools to rattle off, too many names to memorize. How much blood needs to be spilled? Oh, spare me your don't politicize. We're not safe anymore when neighbors are shooting neighbors just for knocking on their door. No, we aren't safe anywhere when too many lose their lives to stray bullets in the air. How many stories do you need? How many records should we break? How much blood needs to be spilled? Oh, spare me your mental health debate. I don't want a good guy with a gun. I don't need a good guy with a gun. If all the bad guys had were bats, then the good guys would need one. We are not safe anymore. They're walking their guns through the synagogue doors.
Chris Matthews.
The Manhattan women behind us are keeping you safe. You are not in a gun-free zone. You do understand that, don't you? You're surrounded by
survivor, and first and foremost, I am the mother of Sean Moss. I am Sean Moss's mother. On August 26, 2014, my total thinking changed. Why?
because someone decided to take my son's life without permission. 17 times he shot my son. Sean's son turned 17 this year. And I can imagine at least one of those 17 thoughts was, why did he take my father? Where will I find another hero? How can I go on without him? But he will go on because I am the voice of Sean Moss, and I will fight until I win. What I need for you to understand, NRA, is this. I don't want your rights. I don't want your guns. I don't even want you around. I want for you to be responsible for the choice that you have made. And if you're not responsible, you will understand that there are consequences for your actions. We're here on this cold morning because we believe in what we're doing. Because we don't want another family to go through what I've went through. Where I live in Lynchburg, Virginia, we started a chapter. And just in case you didn't know, we flipped some seats. After legislation refused to take action, we made more phone calls. We knocked on more doors. And we showed up then, just like we'll keep on showing up. We will not be silenced because you think we should be, but because we don't want another family going through what many families have gone through. And why this morning in that building is the NRA trying to take us back? But I'm here to say we're going forward. We're not going backwards because we're going to fight until we win. We're going to fight until we win. Come on, let's fight! At this time, it is my honor to introduce Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut.
That is a hard act to follow. Hey, this is what a movement looks like, right? Now, I am not dressed for the rain, but I am dressed for a movement, right? And listen, what I know is that they are going to increasingly be here because they can't beat us out there. They're going to try to get the courts to protect them because the voters won't protect them any longer. Because we, for the first time in a long time, we, the anti-gun violence movement, are finally stronger than the gun lobby is. That's why we're flipping seats all over the country, right? That's why we have these guys running for the hills, retiring in droves. And we aren't going to stop because here's what I know. I know as a student of history that the great social change movements are not the ones that gave up when they hit an obstacle, right? Or not the ones that went home when they hit a bump in the road. The great social change movements, the ones that you read about in the history books, those are the ones that knew about the righteousness of their cause, that knew that the status quo would eventually fall and stopped at nothing until they saved lives and changed history. That's what great social change movements are about, and that's what we are. And so this radical agenda to try to take away our ability to protect our kids, right? And I dropped off my kids this morning at public elementary schools that do active shooter drills, readying for what kids believe today is the inevitability that they are going to get shot at. They want to take our right away to make change, to pass laws that actually make our streets safer, that prevent the kind of episodic gun violence that plagues American cities. They want to take that right away, and we are not going to let them do that. So I am dressed today to fight on the inside of these buildings because I know that you guys are dressed and ready to fight on the outside of these buildings. And so it just warms my heart to see big crowd after big crowd, to see rally after rally, to see headquarters after headquarters filled with volunteers, because the stronger you are outside, the stronger you make us inside. Thank you, everybody.
Every army needs a general. And in the red shirt army, we got the best general we can have. I introduce to you now, Shannon Watts.
I'm short. Hello, everyone. I am here today because I am angry. Across the country, our volunteers have stood shoulder to shoulder with all of you here today, and we have passed more than 300 gun safety laws in just 3 years. We have made progress because Americans demand it, and we are fed up with the gun lobby writing our nation's gun laws. We are fed up with children hiding under desks while lawmakers hide behind the gun lobby. We are fed up with lax gun laws that make our neighborhoods, homes, and communities less safe. We have fought back again and again, and we have won. The NRA is trying to erase this progress that we've made in one fell swoop. Are we going to let them get away with that? Hell no! Hell no! The NRA is coming to the courts because they know they're losing in state houses, and in boardrooms, and in the House of Representatives, and in the court of public opinion. They are racked by political and financial scandals. They are being exposed for what they have always been, a front for gun lobbyists who exist only to protect profits at the expense of American lives. The only place the NRA has left to fight is in the Supreme Court, and they won't win there either. The NRA is scared. We are 6 million strong, and the writing is on the wall. The NRA is weaker than they have ever been, and we are stronger than we have ever been. And you want to know why? Because we have shown lawmakers that when they do the right thing, we will have their backs. When they do the wrong thing, we will have their jobs. The bottom line is this. The Supreme Court should not allow the NRA to take a court case that is moot and use it to further its deadly agenda. Good gun laws save lives. So today, we're going to be loud enough that the justices inside know that we're watching everything they do. Too many families live in fear of gun violence, and we do not have to live like this, and our children sure as hell do not die like this. We are proving every day that winning is possible. We outspent the NRA in the 2018 midterm elections, and we beat them in Virginia in both General Assembly. We beat the NRA in their own backyard. We show every day that winning is possible, and together, we're going to keep winning in the courts, too. Thank you.
Zion Kelly is a 19-year-old and lives in Washington, D.C. Since losing his twin brother to gun violence in 2018, Zion has turned his pain into activism, fighting for safe streets, legislation in his brother's name, sharing his story for March of Our Lives, and in a brief for this case, shining a light on the crisis of everyday gun violence through advocacy and outreach. I introduce to you Zion Kelly.
Please talk about people violence.
Greetings, I am Zion Kelly, a native Washingtonian and a second-year student at Florida A&M University. Thank you. And today will go down in history because the Supreme Court, they will decide to hear our voices and hear our pain. And today, they will decide whether they want to hear our voices or to put more lives at risk. For far too long, the topic of gun safety has been swept under the rug. And for far too long, gun violence has plagued our communities, our schools, our churches, and our neighborhood stores. But finally, we as a country are coming together to address it. All across America, we are coming together to demand common sense gun legislations and to elect officials who stand for us and save our lives. But with this case, the Supreme Court can single-handedly rip that away from us. Even more than democracy, human lives are at stake with this case. Gun violence is very prevalent in our society, and it impacts more people than we can possibly imagine. Last year alone, 36,383 Americans were killed last year with guns. People who do not deserve to lose their lives, and people who do not deserve to be shot. But we have to look deeper than numbers. We have to look deeper than statistics. These are real people with real lives. People family members are grieving every day. And I personally know the impact of losing a close loved one. Gun violence in Washington, D.C. has impacted my family for generations. It seemed like it's a never-ending cycle. My grandfather lost his son to gun violence. My dad lost one of his brothers to gun violence in Washington, D.C. And in 2017, I lost my twin brother to a bullet. And this is why this is so personal to me, because my family has been grieving for decades. And the grieving process is something that many people cannot understand unless they actually go through it.
Well,
there's a lot of trauma that comes from it. And for a long time, I felt uncomfortable with leaving my house. It was hard for my family to adjust to our new life. And I did not go to school for weeks. And I did not want to leave my house because the process was too hard. But my twin brother, Zaire, he was only 16 when he was shot coming from a college preparatory program, College Bound. He was miles from the Supreme Court and only steps from my house. And Zaire was an active community member. He spoke out about issues that impact youth across the city. He had the whole world ahead of him. He was an exceptional student and person. I had to find ways to cope and adjust. And speaking out for my community is one way for me to keep my brother's legacy alive. It is a way for me to beat the odds and be a positive role model for my peers and siblings. Zaire had the right not to be shot. My grandfather's son had the right not to be shot. And my father's brother had the right not to be shot, just like 36,000 Americans last year. And we must end this fight against gun violence for future generations. It is time that we make a change. It is time that we gave our communities hope. This is why we have to continue to fight, and fight for the people who cannot be here. We have to fight for the communities who have been marginalized for years, and we have to fight for the students who live every day in fear that they will not make it home. Our voices matters, and if the Supreme Court cares about my life and your lives and the lives of everyone in this country, then they must hear our voices. Again, I am Zion Kelly. Thank you.
We're sorry for your loss. Remember, the Supreme Court does not rule on emotions. It rules
all
on
lives matter.
We ask our...
All lives matter. At this time, I would like to introduce Chris Brown, President of Brady.
Thank you so much, Brenda, and thank you, Zion, for your words. I am so very sorry for your loss. We lose almost 40,000 Americans a year to gun violence. And make no mistake, this is a uniquely American problem, and we are going to fix it. I am Chris Brown, and I am very proud to serve as the president of Brady. Brady was founded by Jim Brady, Jim and Sarah Brady,